Despite its unique appearance, it's one of the least used cars in drag racing and CPM2 overall. A disappointment to some who had high expectations when buying it. In this video, we'll be taking a look into the Drag BMW and why it's one of the least liked cars among CPM2 players. Let's begin. At the point where we are in CPM2, the Drag BMW needs no introduction. You can find it at the very end of the car list in the store, but I guess you already knew that. Using the body of a BMW M3 E36 with modifications like a headlight intake, wide fender flares, wheelie bar and parachute, this car is sure to get attention, which it sure does upon first sight. On the inside, we have the typical gutted race car interior, bucket seat, fire extinguisher and a roll cage. A big point of interest, however, is the dashboard, filled with gauges that serve some purpose in the real car. However, we can see a boost gauge similar to the one on the digital tachometer and another gauge beside it that I have no idea what it does or would do. If you do know, let me know in the comments. Also, you can see buttons on the steering, which I'm guessing could be a trans brake button and or maybe nitrous. A theory I have is that this car could represent the future of CPM2. When the devs would finally start to work on the gameplay elements, we could possibly see some new features related to this car, who knows. This car features the M50 4-speed, the only engine that's not featured in the shop. I wish that were the case for majority of the engines, because this is one thing that makes this car and engine special. The M50 4-speed is a fully built version of the M50 engine found in, you guessed it, the BMW E36. This engine revs to 9,000 RPM and makes 1,200 horsepower on full boost with E85 fuel and air-fuel ratio to the maximum. If you remember, this engine was very popular for creating high horsepower builds in a previous update due to the connecting rods being available for every engine. This engine is swappable into any car compatible with the inline-six and can only be obtained with a Drag BMW. I'd recommend this engine for track or 2 builds cause it makes the right amount of power at the right RPMs. Onto the transmission. You may have seen this one in the market before, the 4-speed 6, a 6-speed manual transmission. That's it, nothing special aside from it having some pretty decor. Now onto the suspension. At the current state, the suspension geometry of the cars are mad weird, and I don't know if the devs are going to fix them eventually, but this is something that affects the car. The suspension bottoms out at a surprisingly high level at the current state of writing this script. I wouldn't say that this is a desirable trait on drag racing suspension design. The tires are just the same old useless tires that don't grip for. Now that I've given a small showcase of this car's features, I'll now give it my honest review. I'll be speaking as unbiased as I can be, and I also will be providing suggestions on what I would change if I were a developer. If the developers are watching this video, then they should be able to take inspiration from it, as the suggestions I'll be provided will be backed by research. Let's start with the body. On the front, we have wide fenders. On a rear-wheel drive drag race car, you won't ever see wide fenders in the front or rear looking like this, as the drivers try to run skinny tires in order to minimize additional weight, resistance and friction. There's more than enough fender to support the wheels in the front. Unless your original intention was to make it a Hot Wheels. At the rear, I also would say that the wide fenders are also unnecessary and unrealistic, and are also the reason why the suspension isn't allowed to squat any lower than what it is now, because the tires glitching through the fenders would obviously look unrealistic. In the real world, this wide fenders would be nothing but more aerodynamic drag on the car, especially in the rear. If we take a look at the car that this is based on, you will see that the owners actually tucked the wheels under the original body, as also shown with the many other cars that do drag racing. The most you'll see is wheels that are on the same line as the bodywork. My suggestion to this is to put the wheels under the body and extend the car's body itself a little instead of adding fenders in case the player would want to use a more powerful engine and wider wheels. Also, give it a drag spoiler, or at least the option to equip one. There's no use having that ducktail on. And now onto the suspension. Regarding what I would say is one of the most important things is the suspension. This is a fully built drag car, it shouldn't be anything near to the road car. Most drag cars use a multilink setup, but a solid axle in the rear should suffice instead of having those ugly double wishbones in the rear. Remember that car's suspension travel is based on the links of the control arms, and to get realistic suspension behavior, you have to give it realistic parameters, such as wishbone and strut mounting locations. I'll show a demonstration. This is Live for Speed, a racing simulator on PC. On the right, you can see some lines, and those lines represent the suspension geometry and mounting points of the arms, strut and hub. Also, you can see the tire deform. With this system, there will always be predictable suspension behavior, as they will always stay within certain parameters. A big example of people who use this type of system are the CarX developers, and they have one of the best car handling models due to this. My other suggestions regarding the car would be, point 1. Fix the tires, make them grip as they should, give the car a reason to have a wheelie bar and make it functional. We need more grip in the surface, it's too little. We also need the tire grip to scale accordingly to tire size and width. We should be able to do wheelies on a non-prep track with the right settings. 2. Like the engine, you could make the transmission available to buy only with the Drag BMW, and you could also make it special, as the Forge Speed 6 is nothing different from the other 6-speed transmissions. This is where you could change it from a manual to a sequential, and it would be the only sequential transmission in-game that's only obtainable by buying the Drag BMW for now. There's nothing wrong with experimenting. The code is in the game in CPM1, and I think all would need to be done is some copy-pasting. All you would need to do is change the shifting UI and reverse it. Yes, I personally do want to see sequential transmissions in-game, even though all of this isn't necessary. You would also need to work on the shift speed. The gears don't shift immediately when you swipe the button up, and I think that could be changed. Tune the suspension geometry. Remove the double wishbone, use solid axle or multi-link if you can. Test and tune it so that it lances perfectly like no other car in the game. These may not be the best of suggestions, but I hope if the devs are watching, that they get some if not all inspiration from this video. Let me know in the comments if you agree with these suggestions. And thank you for watching, I really appreciate you making it this far. I also would like your feedback on the quality of the video production, as I am trying to improve.